All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Buzzer Beater. It's me, Will and D, with my pal Jackson, and we got Matt here to talk about the bracket and then what the heck happened. First, we're going to talk about what the heck happened with West Virginia and getting left out. Just how are you guys feeling about March Madness coming up?
Feeling pretty good.
I mean, it's always one of the most special events of the year, and one thing to just underscore before we talk about the upcoming NCAA tournament, the Field of 68, is that this past weekend, the conference tournaments, it's March Madness just on a larger scale. Like on the Thursday of championship week, you have all the power conferences rolling out 4 games. For some, like the SEC, it was 4 second-round games. For other conferences, just the Big East and ACC, it was 4 quarterfinal games. But you have all the power conferences playing 4 games. You have several dozen games of significance. So just to compare that to first round Thursday at the NCAA tournament, that's 16 games. The Thursday of championship week is north of 50 games that are elimination games. I just want to stress, if you think that March Madness just begins now, no, it began last week. And that portion of championship week is one of the most underrated weeks of the whole sports year.
Mm-hmm. Now, we got to talk about the people making the decisions for the bracketology. Before we even get into this, if I had the power of college basketball, I would say the people that make the decisions of who gets into the tournament need to be Bart Torvik, Jeff Kenton Pomeroy, and then a bunch of bracketologists. These should be the people making the brackets, not athletic directors.
No.
100%, right? Because the athletic directors, they know each other. It's an exclusive club, and it's just human nature. And so, Bubba Cunningham can say how much, he was not part of the process, not part of the discussion, but, these are friends. I mean, they golf together, they lunch together. Come on, let's just be realistic about this. And the other thing I would add, Will, to what you just said, I'd be all for having like the bracket matrix bracketologists, because they surveyed 111 different bracketologists. All of them, not one exception, had West Virginia in. And I believe 27 of them had North Carolina in. That means over 80 had North Carolina out, but all 111 had West Virginia in. In addition to having bracketologists do this, the other thing is just simply make the criteria so obvious and clear cut that you can't work your way around them. There are no loopholes. And for me, the most obvious measurement criterion for inclusion, how many at-large NCAA tournament teams did you beat? Like, that is just a simple thing. How many other teams in the field as at-large selections, or teams that would have been at-large selections? So in other words, everyone that's 48 or higher on the seed list. Like, that's just such an objective thing, all right, that, okay, you either have wins against those teams or you don't. Because West Virginia has several wins against teams that are in the top 48 of the seed list. Gonzaga, Arizona, Iowa State, Kansas, and 3 of those 4 were on the road or away from home, road or neutral. Got a couple in Atlantis. So right there, that's way more than what North Carolina did. North Carolina just has the win over UCLA in New York from December. Just so objective, so clear cut. If that was the main number one criterion for inclusion, how many other at-large caliber teams did you beat? See, then we don't have to have these executives say, whoa, the metrics and the net and the SOS and because I don't hate analytics, but it's pretty clear that when you talk about analytics or the metrics, it's just this numerical stew. It's this goopy, soupy thing that you can just make it whatever you want. And then the metrics were good for North Carolina. Hey, whom did you play? Whom did you beat? Right? So, this is why a lot of people distrust analytics. It's a good thing. They've made sports fans smarter. They've offered so many ways for fans and coaches and players to understand their sport and be smarter about it. So it's good. But when analytics get used in the way they were used to help North Carolina get in over West Virginia, See, that's exactly how people distrust analytics.
Yeah. Agreed. Because, I mean, if North Carolina was any other school, they wouldn't be in.
Absolutely. If we flip-flop this, like, it's not even a conversation, right? So that's absolutely true. And here's another thing to mention. The NCAA tournament expansion has been a hot topic, and a lot of people say, legitimately, I might add, hey, let's not have any expansion at all. And so I can identify with that. I can say, there's a strong logical basis for that. But here's the thing, and thankfully, UC San Diego, Drake, VCU, these mid-majors, they didn't leave it up to the committee. But just imagine if one of them had not won their conference tournament and North Carolina gets in over them. There would have been a huge uproar. Like, Drake barely lost all season. VCU was terrific. UC San Diego was excellent and would have deserved an at-large bid over North Carolina as well. Thankfully, they didn't make this a conversation, but it does raise the point about NCAA tournament expansion. No, it shouldn't be 96, it shouldn't be 80, but I do think at the current configuration with 68 teams, I think it should be expanded to 72, but only so that a strong elite mid-major team, such as a Drake, had it lost the Missouri Valley final to Bradley, such as UC San Diego had it lost the Big West final to Irvine. 4 more slots just for those elite mid-major teams, because obviously if we leave it up to the committee, which is focused on dollar signs and TV ratings and markets, they're going to put a North Carolina in. They're going to put Ohio State in. They're going to put, another, big market team in, a team that, lost 11 games in its conference, has like 14 losses for the season, Texas getting in with 15 losses, so if we could just say there are 4 spots guaranteed for elite mid-majors if they don't win their conference tournaments, that would be really good for the sport of college basketball. And you could basically just have these elite mid-majors play those 11, 12 loss power conference teams in the first 4 in Dayton. That would be great. And you're doing it every year. So just when we talk about NCAA tournament expansion and the bubble, if we could just set aside spots, reserve them for those mid-majors, it would be great. But if there's no governing authority, if there are no set aside provisions for that, yes, then I'm against NCAA expansion, because no one wants to see Ohio State in. No one wants to see Texas in. And that's how it works. We know that's how the sausage is made.
Oh, Texas got that big oil money, of course. So it's like they're going to get bailed out every time.
Mm-hmm. Let's take a look at the bracket here.
Oh, man. I was looking at the Midwest region, which I call it the choke region, because a lot of the teams in that region have a reputation for falling short. Like Houston, for example, they've been falling short over the last few years. Purdue tends to fall short, with the exception of last year. They usually fall short. Kentucky's been losing in the round of 64 the last few years. Tennessee, they have a humongous reputation for losing, coming up short of the Final Four every year. And critics known as Aaron Torres from Fox Sports has said that, hey, the label on Tennessee being a choke artist team should be thrown away because they're doing all right in the SEC tournament. Well, it doesn't make a difference whether they're winning the SEC tournament or going to the title game. They got to go to a Final Four for that narrative to be shut down. That's what Tennessee has to do. But how are you feeling about the Midwest region, Matt?
Yeah, Jackson, I agree with you. Tennessee's never been to the Final Four. Never been to the men's Final Four. So yeah, Tennessee, you need to cross that threshold. And ran into Zach Edey and Purdue in the Elite Eight last year. So it's not as though Tennessee was expected to win that region. Had a chance, but wasn't expected to win it. And it's really a pretty similar deal this year, because Houston set such a high standard under Kelvin Sampson. Played 23 Big 12 games if you include the 3 in the Big 12 tournament, and lost only 1. Houston was just a lawnmower in the Big 12, And, Houston won the Big 12 tournament without Jawan Roberts, its elite big man. And so, he's going to be healthy for the tournament. Like, they don't even need to play Roberts against SIU Edwardsville if he doesn't have to. Like, if I'm Kelvin Sampson, I'm thinking, hey, maybe I just give him like 5 or 6 minutes to just kind of get a sweat, just get a little bit of time on the court. But like, I do not need to play Jawan Roberts 30 minutes against SIUE. So, this is a Houston, Tennessee region. I think generally that, top seeds, the higher seeded teams are going to be the teams that are coming out of these regions. You look at, you're looking at the bottom of the bracket with Tennessee. That sub-regional where Tennessee is, that's in Rupp Arena in Lexington. So Tennessee is going to dominate that building, with UCLA and Utah State being the other teams. They're not going to have a huge amount of fans. UCLA, like, they're disgusted. Like, we don't care about a 7 seed. That's not how they roll. Like, UCLA fans expect to be a top 2 seed with a legitimate Final Four contender. I know Mick Cronin made the Final Four as a first 4 team, but like, that's the exception that proves the rule. Like, no one thinks UCLA is going deep in this. So Tennessee is going to be dominating Rupp Arena, like nearly 24,000, the big barn in the Bluegrass. So I think Tennessee looks solid on the first weekend. And then, of course, you can see the intriguing possibilities in this part of the bracket. Tennessee against Illinois or Kentucky is a really terrific, delicious, tantalizing Sweet 16 game. That would be in Indianapolis. So that would be a grand old time. And so, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, all legitimate.
Do you think that would be a home game for Kentucky in Indianapolis? Do you think they would? I mean, I know Vol fans travel strong too, though.
Well, they both put a ton of people in there. That's for sure. I mean, it would be a pretty split crowd. I would say, if it's Tennessee, Illinois, I mean, Tennessee would have more in the building, but Tennessee, Kentucky, that might be pretty close to a 50-50.
And Kentucky
split.
handled the Volunteers the first 2 times, so would be a fun.
Yep. Like that. Kentucky has been Tennessee's kryptonite, but we have to wonder about Lamont Butler. How healthy is he going to be for this tournament? So that's a real question. And let's just look at Kentucky, Illinois in a possible second round matchup. Kentucky and Illinois, these teams, they really have so much in common, right? When they're on, oh man, you're toast. And when they're off, like, you can beat them by 25. Like, that there is a large amount of variance between the best and the worst versions of these teams. Like, this is a contrast with Houston, right? Houston's always going to play nasty defense, always going to rebound, always going to get after it. Now, might not make shots, but the Houston defense is always going to be there. Houston has a higher floor, never gets too low. The floor is higher. Even on a bad night, Houston's going to maintain a certain standard. But with Illinois and Kentucky, the A game is out of sight, and the worst game can really be awful. So Illinois, Kentucky, anything can happen in that game. Would not be shocked if it just spirals for one team and the other wins by 20. It could also be an instant classic as well. So that is a fascinating potential matchup, assuming Illinois can get through its part of the bracket. I don't see Kentucky being tested too much by Troy. And, this is Mark Pope's first NCAA tournament. He wants this. That he is going to have his team ready for Troy. And Kentucky, as we know, got stale at the end of John Calipari's tenure. I don't think you're going to see a stale performance in that first round. And Mark Pope's going to get Kentucky through there. So Kentucky, Illinois, and the winner to play Tennessee. Lots of fascinating matchups in that bracket. So we're still talking about the Midwest. Let's go up to that top half of the bracket. You could easily have, folks, a 12 versus 13 second round game. Let's introduce the term if you haven't heard it before. This could be a bomb shelter bracket. All right? 2 double-digit seeds. We call it a bomb shelter bracket. Will Wade in the NCAA tournament, he's licking his chops. And he could be the next NC State head coach, so he gets a little scouting report on an ACC team.
He's also facing his alma mater. Also,
Will Wade wants this. He wants this badly.
He graduated from Clemson. That's his alma mater. So that's another thing.
Yeah. So he wants this. And like there have been murmurings about Brad Brownell saying, maybe I finally need a change of scenery. It would be interesting to really get inside the minds of each of these coaches. But and Clemson doesn't have Dylan Hunter. Chase Hunter's the star, but Dylan Hunter is a key role player. He was out in the ACC tournament. That definitely hurt Clemson in the loss to Louisville. So that's another reason, if you're thinking about McNeese, McNeese is not playing a full strength Clemson team. Even if Dylan Hunter plays, he might not be 100%. Tigers might be a little bit vulnerable there. And then Purdue High Point. Purdue had Zach Edey, and Zach Edey was the best player in college basketball last year. It was just a matchup problem that opponents, except for UConn, the juggernaut, couldn't solve. But now Purdue has looked very ordinary the past few weeks. High Point, a high-achieving mid-major, and High Point did not have an easy ride either in its conference tournament. Trailed big in the final against Winthrop and was able to come all the way back and win. So that High Point is breathing confidence here. We've seen Purdue lose as a 4 seed in recent NCAA tournaments, before Zach Edey. So a lot of people are going to be all over High Point in this one. I don't know. I know Purdue's been stale, but Matt Painter did a really good job with this team through early February. This is like a 50-50 one, but it would not be a stunner if you saw a bomb shelter bracket, the 12 versus the 13. And then of course, we haven't even talked about this. We could have Houston versus Gonzaga in the second round. It could be the best second round game on the entire board. Many people think Gonzaga should have been a 7 seed as a result of winning the West Coast Conference tournament. Nope, Gonzaga was not rewarded for that conference tournaments. And, in terms of the selection committee's bracketing every year, it seems as though the conference tournament results, most of them get ignored. Now, some are paid attention to. It seems most of the time conference tournament performance gets undervalued by the committee. So we have an example of that for Gonzaga. Georgia has been playing great the past few weeks, but it's hard to pick against Mark Few, right, in March Madness. Mark Few, he's made the Sweet 16 each of the last 9 times he's been in the NCAA tournament. And, so we exclude the COVID year, 2020. There was no NCAA tournament that year. The last 9 times there has been an NCAA tournament, Mark Few has made
that's very
the Sweet 16. So, Mark Few's a home run hitter in March. And so it sets up the possible second rounder against Houston. That should just be an absolutely sensational game. And we'll just see if Gonzaga can lift its defense to an elite level. Gonzaga struggled on defense for good portions of the WCC season, gave up over 100 to Santa Clara at home, really rode the struggle bus at times. Can Gonzaga defend at an elite level against Uzan and Cryer and Houston's guards? And, that's why Houston's a 1 seed, that it was able to replace the scoring of Jamal Shed with Uzan, with Cryer. Houston can score. So when a Kelvin Sampson team, always known for its defense and rebounding, can also score, you get a number 1 seed. So Gonzaga-Houston could be the single best second round game all weekend on either the Saturday or the Sunday. So I think it's Houston versus Tennessee because Kentucky has the Lamont Butler injury question. That's what decides the bottom half of the bracket for me of Tennessee getting through. And I think Houston finds is a better defensive team than Gonzaga. So Houston digs out that win. It's going to be close, but I do like Houston coming through. So Houston versus Tennessee, and I will take Houston. I will take Kelvin Sampson over Rick Barnes. All the cards on the table in the Elite Eight.
All right, so we have Houston coming out of the Midwest, and I gotta look at the West. This is Florida, for as well as they're playing, they got a rough draw in the West region. I feel like this is
Talk to me. Tell me why.
Maryland's been playing fantastic lately. I know they lost that heartbreaker against the Wolverines, but I feel like Maryland during the since that half-court buzzer beater, Maryland was a buzzsaw through the rest of the Big Ten until that game against the Wolverines. And then, I mean, Texas Tech, JT Toppin has been one of the best players in the country. And McCollum, that's his name. Like, he's been one of the most underappreciated head coaches in the country for what he's done for the Red Raiders. And then St. John's, Rick Pitino. I wish they were in the East region because that would have just, like, St. John's against Duke in Newark, like, that would just be fantastic. But, like, I feel like St. John's defense, I mean, I don't know if they can slow down Florida, but, I mean, I feel like they'll definitely could give them a fight. So I just feel like, although Florida's been playing the best right now, that, like, beating up on the SEC, I feel like they got the toughest draw.
Oh, we could see
Out of
an
any of the
SEC
ones we-
rematch in the round of 32 between Florida and Oklahoma. That's a possibility.
And, I mean, UConn is still, like, Grant Hurley, UConn, Dan Hurley. I mean, that's not going to be a gimme facing the two-time defending national champions.
No.
Do you agree with me, Matt?
It's not a gimme. That's definitely not a layup. Like, Dan Hurley is as proven a coach as there is in this business when you win back-to-back national championships. And, doing podcasting and talking about college basketball as I do, I was on a recent show with a commentator who noted that, not only is Terrace Reed coming on really strong for UConn, the sixth man of the year in the Big East, but also he pointed out that Aiden Mahaney, the guard, the transfer from St. Mary's, he struggled a lot.
I thought he would do a lot better.
Well, I was just about to talk about that. Yeah. It seems as though, in November through January, it was a real struggle for him, but like the lights beginning to go on for Aiden Mahaney. Yeah. And so that might mean that UConn is ready to lift its game to that elite level, because we all saw Mahaney at St. Mary's, such a great floor general, orchestrator on the court. Like, he's savvy, really high basketball IQ. The problem for him at UConn has been the speed of the game. He doesn't have that natural elite quickness that a lot of opposing guards in the Big East have. So, but because he's so smart, learning how to be in the right position, learning how to angle off opponents, he's been getting better at that recently. And so if Mahaney can play an elite game, Florida UConn's going down to the wire, and that could be very tough for the Gators. I will say, though, that, like Maryland has Derek Queen. That could be a matchup problem, but Florida has size. Man. See, Florida had – the thing about Florida can beat you to death on the glass with its length, with its size, but it can also shoot you out of the building. Like Florida has an elite combination of size and power and three-point shooting. Not many other teams in the country have what Florida does at that elite level, that combination of all those ingredients. So I think that Florida can neutralize Derek Queen in a potential Sweet 16 game, a regional semifinal against Maryland. I just think Florida is equipped. I think it's less about the opponents. It's more about Florida has an answer for you. You want to play fast? Florida has the guards with Clayton that can beat you in the open court. If you want to play a racehorse game, Florida can definitely do that. Like Florida, and Jackson knows this painfully well. Florida was just the matchup nightmare for Alabama. Like Florida just has all the ingredients to specifically deal with Alabama's style of play. So Florida can win a game in the 90s, but hey, you want to mix it up? You want to play in the 60s, low 70s? Florida's rebounding and toughness, we've seen it again and again. Florida can dominate the glass, can win not by making shots, but by putting back missed shots and by getting loose balls. So I just think Florida has answers for everyone in the top half of the bracket. In the bottom half of the bracket, I love Drake. I love Drake over Mizzou. Missouri's a good team, and what Missouri did in the SEC, Jackson knows this well, following the conference as he does. Missouri can shoot the three ball. Missouri can really torch it up from three-point range. But what does Drake bring to the table? Drake's going to get in your grill. Drake's going to run you off the 3-point line. Drake's going to crowd you. So I think Drake is uniquely suited to short circuit Missouri's 3-point shooting. So I really like the Ben McCollum there. And then with Texas Tech has some injury questions, was not playing healthy at the Big 12 tournament. Had a couple of prime players out resting. That's partly why Arizona was able to win over Texas Tech in the semifinals. So health's going to be a question for the Red Raiders. So that really does mean this is St. John's sub-regional to lose. Like St. John's, beating Florida will be a real challenge, but I do think St. John's gets there to play Florida in the Elite Eight. I think, I just said that, Houston versus Tennessee in the Midwest, but this is the region, to me, this is the region where I think the most likely region to produce a 1 versus 2 regional final, it's this, because these two teams are on a roll. Florida St. John's, epic collision course. The big reminder about Rick Pitino as he comes back to the NCAA tournament, 14-1 all time in the Sweet 16. He is the best Sweet 16 coach in the history of the NCAA tournament. So definitely thinking that Florida and St. John's meet up, and I think that will be the best pre-Final Four game in this entire bracket.
That's going to be fun. Kansas, Arkansas just stands out to me. Calipari self.
And then you have a Calipari-Patino second-round game. So people have been saying the Italian restaurants in Providence are just going to do amazing business this coming week. So lots of spicy meatballs this weekend.
Mm-hmm. And with Boogie Flan, that's that guy's name. Him coming back, I think,
yes,
yeah. Like I would like,
so it just raises the question: Boogie Flan coming back. Sometimes Arkansas has been good, not great, but good, like good enough to get into the NCAA tournament after being really bad through January. When a player comes back in, that can kind of disrupt the chemistry. So it'll be interesting to see against Kansas how many minutes does Calipari give to Boogie Flan. Does he try and give him starter level minutes, or maybe just like a 12 to 15 minute run? Maybe it could be something where he gives him like a 6-minute shift first half, sees what he has, and then that will dictate what he does in the second half. That's a real variable there. But when with Kansas, you guys might know this, but obviously this is a NCAA tournament preview podcast, so let's mention it for everyone listening in, just to make sure everyone knows. Bill Self, in 2 decades, in 20 years at Kansas, his first year at Kansas was 2004. In 20 years of NCAA tournament play at Kansas, Bill Self had at least a minimum number 4 seed every single season. And so this finally breaks the streak. Roy Williams didn't even make the NCAA tournament a couple years at North Carolina. The Larry Drew years had a couple other teams that slipped through the cracks. Mike Krzyzewski didn't make the NCAA tournament one time at Duke in 2021. I'm not even counting the early 1980s because Coach K hadn't become Coach K back then, but he did miss the NCAAs in 2021. Most of the elite iconic coaches miss an NCAA tournament once or twice over a 20, 30-year period. Part of the greatness of Bill Self is that not only was he making the NCAA tournament every year, but always as a number 4 seed or better. That's just absolutely insane. Who's going to come close to that? That's just absolutely ridiculous.
Not really many people can do that.
That's right. So with Kansas being a 7, that just tells you how badly this team has underperformed, how it has failed to come together. So I definitely like Arkansas over Kansas. And we're going to have an Italian-American second-round game with Calipari and Patino.
Oh man, I know it's not going to happen, but it would be nice to see a Kansas-Missouri rematch in the Sweet 16. I mean, I know that's
Wow, that would be absolutely amazing.
Mhm. So do you think Drake's Sweet 16, Matt? I know you had him being Missouri. Do you think they're sweet?
Drake getting to the Sweet 16 would not surprise me. Like I think Drake Texas Tech in a second rounder, that's a coin flip. Like I can just see Drake and Texas Tech having a rock fight because we know Grant McCasland at Texas Tech, great defensive coach. Like he built his reputation as a defensive coach at North Texas. That was the body of work that put him on Texas Tech's radar, led to his ascent up the coaching ladder. So Drake Texas Tech feels like a 60 to 57 game, one winner, one way or the other. I do think JT Toppin's skill is a slight difference maker for Texas Tech in that game. But if you told me right now Drake's in the Sweet 16, like, okay, yeah, because and here's the thing about Ben McCollum. Again, you guys probably know this, but listeners in the podcast don't. Ben McCollum's won the conference championship wherever he's coached the last 10 years. Every year he has won his conference championship. He did it in Division II, and he goes to Drake in year one at the D1 level, wins the Missouri Valley. Like the dude just wins. And of course, he's won multiple national championships at the lower college level. He comes to Drake, and he brought players up from his Division II coaching staff. They dominated a mid-major Division I conference. So Ben McCollum, definitely someone to watch. I don't know if you've heard these rumors as well, but I've talked to IU. I've talked to Kansas fans. Kansas fans say, if Bill Self retires, Ben McCollum. So like that right there tells you this guy could be something. Well, he has been something very special, but now he could become special at the highest level of college basketball if an athletic director pays him a call and if McCollum is willing to say yes.
My favorite game of the regular season, Drake, Kansas State. With all that money Kansas State spent, they went and they lost to a team with a bunch of D2 players.
And that was a wild game. Like Drake led by like 16, and then Kansas State led late, and then it went into overtime, and Drake ultimately won. That was a crazy game way back when.
Oh, man. Oh, here we go.
Taking a look at the South region. This is also a fun region. I mean, Auburn, like you would have thought there would be no way they would lose this region earlier, like about maybe 3 weeks ago, but with them struggling, could be Michigan State's, but there's also a lot of fun matchups in this region. Could be another bombshell bracket for sure.
Oh man, Michigan State.
Go ahead, Jackson.
Michigan State's going at it again, looking to make another Final Four run. And if they do make it to a Final Four, can they finally break through and get that natty?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Tom Izzo is that like every 4 to 5 years he gets there, right? Because Izzo took over Michigan State in the mid-1990s from Judd Heathcote. And so he makes the Final Four in 1999. So that meant that his first class at Michigan State from the mid-90s when he stepped in there made the Final Four. When we think about – go ahead, Will.
His first 4 all made it, right? Didn't he make 4 in a row, or was it 3 in a row?
Yeah, so from the mid-90s through 2013, every class that Izzo had, every graduating class that Izzo had at Michigan State over nearly a 20-year period made the Final Four. So it got snapped in 2014 because he made the Final Four in 2010 with Draymond Green. Then 2011, 12, 13 didn't make it. And then when he didn't make it in 2014, the class of 2014 never did make a Final Four. And then what does Izzo do? He makes the Final Four in 2015, and then he makes it in 2019. So every class from the mid-90s through 2022, every class except 2014 and then this recent 2024 class. Those are the only two that haven't made the Final Four. So if he makes it in 2025, it will feel very familiar in terms of Izzo just regularly making the Final Four every several years at Michigan State. Now, Will, you or one of you guys said we could have a bomb shelter bracket here. Yeah, look at this. UC San Diego. If you look at the betting lines, and we're not advocating gambling, but just that's a good window into what the public thinks about these games. Michigan's UC San Diego. That's like Michigan's like a 2.5 point favorite, maybe even 1.5 in some places. So that's viewed as being a very close games, and like the nerds, the analytics crowd will say, hey, UC San Diego's metrics are excellent. And so that is partly why the betting line is so small. It's not quite a pick 'em, but like Michigan is a narrow favorite there. And that's with Dusty May, guy who went to the Final Four 2 years ago. And even then, UC San Diego is viewed as a team that's roughly the equal of Michigan. So Eric Olin, let's get that name in our discussion. Eric Olin has been the coach at UC San Diego for several years. He has been through the transition from lower division to Division I, and he has UC San Diego as Big West champion. So Eric Olin, to me, like he should be a prime candidate for the open job at UNLV. If I'm the AD at UNLV, I give Eric Olin a call. He might be a coach worth bringing into Vegas to revive the running Rebels. But anyway,
the Thomas and Mack Center popping again.
Absolutely. Like UNLV, no NCAA tournament since 2013. That's insane. Oh
my God.
So anyway, Eric Olin, he a lot of ADs are going to be watching him against Dusty May in Michigan. That's an incredible 5-12 game, and it does figure to be close every step of the way. And then Texas A&M Yale, Jackson as the SEC expert here, he knows full well. Last year, Yale, as a 13 seed, beat a number 4 seed from the SEC. That team a year ago was Auburn. So Yale over A&M, and James Jones, the coach at Yale, Villanova. Hello, if Villanova could hire Mr. Jones over at Yale, that hire would make all the sense in the world, right? Cultural fit, knows the area, knows the Northeast, like that would make a lot of sense. Villanova could do a lot worse than that. So we could easily have a 12 versus a 13 here. Would not surprise me at all. I mean, Texas A&M is really good, but what do we know about
Texas A&M? A one-man team.
Go what again, Will?
They're kind of a one-man team.
Wade Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't foul him,
and the other thing is Texas A&M depends on offensive rebounding. Like Texas A&M does not have great shooters. Texas A&M does not have an efficient offense. Texas A&M depends on getting loose balls, winning the glass. If you can play A&M even on the glass, you can beat them. So Yale, having already beaten Auburn a year ago in March Madness, could easily win. So we could have a 13-12 here, bomb shelter bracket, and I would not be surprised at all. Now Louisville Creighton. What a fascinating matchup. We have Red Jays against the Blue Jays, or Red Birds against the Bluebirds. However you want to call it. But definitely an ornithologist's dream matchup for sure. But Louisville has to be wondering, hey, why are we seeded 8? Right? We won 20 ACC games, and of course the ACC was down this year. But Louisville beat Clemson, and Louisville did finish second in the conference. Actually, Louisville beat Clemson twice because it won the ACC semifinal in addition to the regular season. And Louisville gets an 8 for making the ACC final. That would suggest Louisville was a 9 seed going into the ACC tournament. What? Louisville, not being at least a 7, if not a 6. Like I was thinking Louisville would settle in as a 6 seed, but the floor was a 7. Baffled by Louisville getting an 8. And by the way, just to go back to North Carolina getting in. When we all saw Louisville as an 8, didn't we all think, oh, Carolina's screwed, right? Because we all saw Louisville getting underseeded, and yet North Carolina still gets in. Anyway, brief digression there. But anyway, Louisville against Creighton, that's an amazing 8-9 game. But Louisville, one thing, Kashawn Pryor was a transfer from South Florida. Louisville's did almost everything it did without Pryor. He got injured 1 month into the season. So as good as Louisville has been, this has not been a full-strength team since the beginning of December. So that reinforces how great a job Pat Kelsey has done. As soon as he upgrades the talent up and down the roster, Louisville's going to be, a top 4 seed in future NCAA tournaments. But Louisville against Auburn, Louisville is not a fully resourced team because of that Kashawn Pryor injury. Creighton's the more interesting one because Ryan Kalkbrenner maybe has a chance to erase Janai Broome. Like, he can take Janai Broome out of the game. Now, Auburn has lots of other dudes, but Janai Broome is its best dude. And so Creighton, to me, has more upset potential than Louisville, if we're just making that comparison going up against Auburn. But I do think Auburn is going to get through this bracket. The defense is there. Tahad Pettiford is a great shot maker from the perimeter. But Auburn has a lot in common with Florida, that Auburn can win in the 90s. Auburn can win in the 60s. Auburn can win when it's pretty. Auburn can win in the mud. Auburn can win when it's fast. Auburn can win when it's slow. Not every team can do that, but Auburn has that ability to adjust. And I also think that losing early in the NCAA tournament last year, not a good thing, but it's the kind of moment that will have this team with that right edge, the right mentality. Chad Baker-Mazara, he got ejected early in the Yale game last season, I believe, or at least he had a flagrant technical early in the game, which really put Auburn in a spot of difficulty. So you got to think that Baker-Mazara is going to get his head on straight this time, and he will be a much more effective contributor for Auburn. So I can see Creighton in particular, playing a close game, but I do think Auburn has enough to get to the Elite Eight. And so as we go to that lower portion of the bracket with Michigan State, you look at Iowa State, Keshawn Gilbert, he's not likely to play, at least in the early rounds of this NCAA tournament. So Iowa State's been battling injuries. It's why you really haven't seen the Cyclones play nearly as well with Gilbert out. Also, Tamin Lipsey's been battling injuries. So that's why the team that looked like a number 1 seed in early January hasn't been playing nearly as well since then. So that's certainly a check mark in Michigan State's favor. But look at that second round. Marquette hasn't quite put it all together, but like the ingredients are there, right? We talk about guard play in the NCAA tournament. Cam Jones.
I'm excited to see Cam Jones go against Donovan Dent for New Mexico. That's a treat for us.
That is an amazing guard matchup. That's an amazing duel. And if Marquette does get through New Mexico, Michigan State Marquette
bad for Marquette
was a 7 versus 2. It was a 7 versus 2 second round game 2 years ago, but Marquette was the 2. Michigan State was the 7, and the 7 seed won. Michigan State beat second seeded Marquette, went to Madison Square Garden, played Kansas State, the Marquise Noel team in the Sweet 16. Kansas State won to get to the Elite Eight, lost to FAU and Dusty May in the regional final. So we could have a 7 over a 2, and it's role reversal. 2 years ago, Michigan State winning in the second round. This year, Marquette could get its revenge. So that's really interesting. And then let's not forget Chris Beard and Ole Miss there as the 6th seed. And with Iowa State's injury problems, you could easily see Ole Miss getting to the Sweet 16. And, we could have, if it's, let's say it's Texas Tech versus Michigan State, or Texas Tech. I'm thinking about this former team. I was about to set it up. Yeah. If we see Ole Miss, if we see Ole Miss versus Michigan State, it would be a rematch of Texas Tech, Michigan State at the 2019 Final Four in Minneapolis. Chris Beard against Tom Izzo in a very big game. So Ole Miss, Michigan State could be an immensely attractive Sweet 16 matchup as well. So I would lean toward Michigan State, but I don't feel as confident about the Spartans as I do other 2 seeds and other higher seeds across the board. So I think Marquette, Ole Miss, as well as Iowa State. But Marquette, I think Marquette is kind of that team. We usually see one of these teams, right? One of these teams that underachieves during the regular season, but you get to March Madness and like, oh, our careers are about to end, and we haven't quite put it together. Let's do it now before it's too late. Marquette could be that team because Marquette was a 2 seed each of the previous 2 NCAA tournaments, and like there are still ingredients of a really good team there, but it just hasn't quite fit. Maybe this is the moment when it does. So like this is one of the more balanced regions, and I think this is a region where you could see one a weird regional final more than the other regions on the board.
Also, Tom Izzo with his success in the past against Tony Bennett, like that sting for Spartan fans. Like they thought they had that national championship if they would have won that game.
If they got to the final, yes.
Oh man.
So just to be clear, I do like Auburn out of the South region, but I do think it's more of a balanced bracket with more possibilities than the other regions.
All right, so we're going all 1 seed so far.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And there will be a note about 1 seeds in a few minutes after we talk about the East region here.
Mm-hmm. And looking at Duke's region here, I think they have a pretty clear path to the Elite Eight.
Of course.
I mean, but I'll see, in my opinion, from what I've seen, but see if you agree with me there.
Well, so let's start this off by noting that Duke won at Arizona in Tucson in November, and it was pretty convincing. And so even though Arizona's gotten better, what's the weapon Arizona has to deal with Duke's defense? And I think the natural answer is Caleb Love.
Yeah, they need him to be hot.
Caleb Love from North Carolina, he knows Duke really, really well. But, what's the thing about Arizona is that, Arizona is at its best when it doesn't depend on Caleb Love to have to do everything. So, obviously, if Caleb Love is in flamethrower mode, God mode, Arizona can beat anyone. But Duke's going to try to take him away. Duke's game plan on defense is going to be to take out Caleb Love. So for that reason, who else? Who's the non-Caleb Love player on Arizona who can be, that matchup problem for Duke? Now, broadly viewed, this region is going to depend on the injury status of players. Cooper Flagg hurt, Malik Brown hurt. Now they say their reports have come out saying they're going to be available. Now, like John Shire is not going to play either of them in the first round against a number 16 seed. You just do not need to play them. Like you can get through that game without even 1 minute of Cooper Flagg or Malik Brown. So really the key question is going to be how effective will they be in that second round game against either Mississippi State or Baylor. And with Baylor, who's on Baylor? Former Dookie Jeremy Roach.
Jeremy Roach. Yep, Jeremy Roach. Saw him play high school at St. Paul
there. That could be an interesting little angle there. So it's just, it's not so much whether Flagg and Brown play. It's if they play, can they be effective, right? Because just playing doesn't really matter if you're not effective. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And then in the other half of this East region bracket, we turn to Jackson's Alabama Crimson Tide. They have a big entry question. Grant Nelson, and Mark Sears. Mark Sears is the big dog on this team, but Alabama does not make its first Final Four last year without Grant Nelson really, really stepping up in that regional out in Los Angeles against North Carolina and then Clemson. Grant Nelson was like that X factor who became, an elite game-changing force for Alabama. So you'd think Alabama, look similar to Duke. You don't need Grant Nelson against Robert Morris. You don't need him for that first game, but will he be available for that second game? And we can all see the bracket here. It could be Alabama Vanderbilt in an SEC game in the second round, and let's just look at
Don't
that.
let deja vu happen in college basketball. The Bama March Madness.
Yep, absolutely. That this St. Mary's Vanderbilt game, Randy Bennett, Mark Byington, two brilliant coaches. Like this, you have Self against Calipari, so you have two Hall of Famers there. But in terms of two guys who are crushing it right now, because Bill Self and John Calipari, no one would say this is one of their better years. In terms of a first-round matchup between two coaches that have done an elite job this season, maybe you go with Ben McCollum against Dennis Gates in that Drake, Missouri game. That's one possibility. But I identify this game. Randy Bennett, he beat Gonzaga 2 more times this year, won the WCC over Gonzaga again. The guy's he's become a home run hitter in recent years. Just Randy Bennett's one of the most amazing game planning coaches in the country. I always like to say he's like Liam Neeson. All right, I will find you and I will hunt you down. Like Randy Bennett. Randy Bennett is going to hunt you down. He's going to find your weakness and he will expose you. But here he runs into Mark Byington, who, as we know, not only the phenomenal job in year 1 at Vanderbilt, but he got James Madison to the dance, and James Madison whacked Wisconsin in that first round game. So like Byington was ready with a plan, the way JMU tore Wisconsin apart. So Byington and Bennett, two elite tactical coaches. I cannot wait for that matchup. That's going to be something special. But then the focus turns to Alabama in the second round, and Grant Nelson's availability. That's going to be a major factor.
Well,
there.
and before we started the show, and before Jeffrey and I got off with Crimson Tide Live, we found out that Grant Nelson is reported to be questionable for Robert Morris. So maybe he won't be able to play against Robert Morris, but he could play against the winner of St. Mary's Vandy. So that's a good sign that he could be there for round 32 if we can get through Robert Morris.
That is great news. I think, if they're designating him as questionable for a game that Alabama doesn't need him, then 2 days later, I would think he'd be upgraded to probable for that second round game. So definitely good news for Alabama fans on that front. So we mentioned Wisconsin a little bit earlier, but obviously Wisconsin last year was one kind of team, and this year it's a very different kind of team. And Greg Gard has turned Wisconsin from that stodgy, plodding, defense-first Wisconsin team that we all know very well. Yeah, this year it's very different with John Tonje, with Blackwell, and guys who can light it up. And Wisconsin, 19 made threes in the Big Ten quarterfinals against UCLA. Just absolutely took a blowtorch to Mick Cronin and the Bruins. So Wisconsin is not your father's, this is not Dick Bennett. This is not Bo Ryan. This is new age Wisconsin. And so Wisconsin versus BYU, holy moly. Now, I know Will has his VCU Rams, and we'll talk about that game in a bit. But if we do get BYU Wisconsin, like that is the game in the second round that could be, 98-95. Like Illinois, Kentucky, and BYU Wisconsin could both be like racehorse games played in the 90s. That would just be amazing entertainment if it happens. But VCU, I know Will hopes that it busts up that BYU Wisconsin matchup. And here's an interesting little fact: BYU last year was a 6 seed. And whom did BYU play? The Atlantic 10 tournament champion. And who won? The Atlantic 10 tournament champion. Duquesne KO'd BYU. So it could be deja vu, BYU, CU. And with VCU saying CU, BYU. Yeah. So that's a fascinating plot point. And, once again, for those who are interested in this sort of thing, BYU's like a 2-point favorite.
Mm-hmm.
You know, BYU's been on fire. BYU has been on fire the past month. Beat Iowa State multiple times. You know, did it in the Big 12 tournament. Did it in Hilton, which is really hard. BYU won at Arizona. Like, BYU's just been taking names. BYU beat Kansas by like 30, and yet, BYU's just a 2-point favorite over VCU. So the Rams are getting a lot of respect from the public, and they see this as a really, really close game. So it's going to be fascinating if the A10 can once again deliver that knockout punch to BYU. Now, of course, last year it was Mark Pope coaching BYU. This year it's Kevin Young, first-year coach. So like that adds another variable to the mix. But that is just a delicious 6 versus 11 game. So
yeah, I mean, feeling good. I mean, 5th best defensive efficiency in college, field goal efficiency in college basketball. But like when I was there in school, when Mike Roach was the coach, the offense was not there. I mean, there were moments with Bone Tylan doing well, and then Ace Baldwin with the assist, but the offense just wasn't there. But with this group of guards and with Jack Clark flipping the switch, which was part of the reason why they're the bad non-conference losses to Seton Hall in there. Also with Philip Russell's foul trouble, but like I just feel like this team can shoot the three, but the defense is still there, especially with the shot blocking, and the guard play. I don't know. I'm hoping for a possible Sweet 16 run, but I mean I just want one win. But like if we get the one win, I think Sweet 16 is possible.
Absolutely, you know, because Wisconsin can come and go. I mean, Wisconsin lost to Penn State just before the Big Ten tournament. You don't know which version of Wisconsin you're going to get. So in some with this East region, guys, I think the big story is just Alabama and Duke both have injury questions going in. And so like that is a little bit different from the other regions we see in the bracket. You don't have as many injury questions with the top seeds as you do here. So this is there's a certain degree of fragility, not the teams themselves, but just because they both have important players, with injuries. So I'm going to lean to Duke, but it's not as strong as in other regions. Like I lean Auburn, but I'm not completely sold. I feel very confident about Florida, and I feel fairly confident about Houston. I would say Florida is like my most confident Final Four pick, Houston second, Auburn third, and then Duke fourth, just because of the Cooper flag. And let's not forget Malik Brown, important role player, important defensive player. That should not be forgotten. Now, I was going to mention a little tidbit.
Will this be the first time since 2008 since all four?
So here's the thing. Yeah, it would be the first time since 2008. And it would just be the second time ever that all four number one seeds get in, if that happens. Where was the 2008 Final Four? Jackson.
It was in San Antonio.
Where is the 2025 men's Final Four?
San
Antonio.
How about that? You love those bracket bits, those little coincidences, like BYU playing the A10 tournament champion the second straight year in a 6-11 game. Yeah, it's just the unearthing those little tidbits is just one of the fun and fascinating things about Selection Sunday and looking at the bracket. So that would be something if San Antonio has the only 2 Final Fours ever to have all 4 number 1 seeds.
And do we want to take a quick look at the first 4 just for a second?
Well,
Sure.
Anybody that's won a first 4 game, there's at least been one first 4 winner that's advanced far or further than one game, except for 2019. So it's like, I wonder who it's going to be this year. My
candidate for that, now this doesn't mean I think they're a good team, because I think Rodney Terry is still going to get fired. Like I don't think getting this far saves him. Now maybe if he makes a Sweet 16 run, maybe that saves his job. But I think just one win or even 2, if he falls short of the Sweet 16, I don't think he stays at Texas. I think athletic director Chris Del Conte will search for a home run hitter as head coach. But Texas is the kind of team, to me, that could make a run, only because they have a top 5 lottery pick, Trey Johnson. Like Trey Johnson can be for Texas what Danny Manning was to Kansas in 1988. You know, he can be what Glenn Rice was to Michigan in 1989. He's just, hey, climb aboard, guys. I got this. I'm going to put 40 up, and I'm just going to carry you along for the ride. Like Texas has that aircraft carrier in Trey Johnson. If he gets hot, like, you know, forget about it. Forget about it. So just Texas has that potential. Texas has the higher ceiling because of Trey Johnson. You know, Texas had 7 quad 1 wins in the SEC. That's why it got in despite the 15 losses. So I'm not saying Texas is this really good team. I'm just saying Texas's ceiling is higher. Texas has the potential. A note about the San Diego State-North Carolina game. San Diego State's getting back one of its role players. I don't know how to pronounce the name, but he's a forward who averages like 9 points, several rebounds a game, and hasn't played since February 22nd. John Rothstein tweeted it out. So San Diego State is getting like one of its role player cogs back after 4 weeks without him. That's just something to pay attention to in that first 4 game in Dayton.
Mm-hmm. And like one more like personal note on the first 4. My parents' alma mater, Mount St. Mary's, very happy they got in, winning the MAC. My dad was a big supporter of the program, especially under Jamie Christian. And when he had it rolling there, so happy to see them out back in a little fun little DMV matchup against AU.
Yeah, I mean, Mount St. Mary's, you know, was a number 6 seed in the MAC. I call it the MAC because you have to differentiate it from the MAC, right? So Mount St. Mary's was a 6 seed, but you know, took out Merrimack and then took out Iona, just a team that's on a roll. And
with injuries, it's like that. It reminds me of kind of Notre Dame with all the injuries they have. 2 of their top 3 scorers out.
That's right. And still won. Yes, that's right.
And I know Dayton Xavier is a big rivalry, and it's at Dayton. I'm wondering if like they're going to be UD fans there cheering for Texas, or, well, I mean, I know Texas will travel well as well, but it'll be interesting.
I don't know how many Texas fans are going to be in that building because they want Rodney Terry gone. Yeah, I think most Longhorn fans want Rodney Terry gone. So I don't know how many burnt orange folks are going to be in that building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
looks like if Xavier beats Texas, it's going to be a disco inferno for Rodney Terry.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I kind of think his seat's already flambéed, but yeah. I mean, if he wants to save his job, he better win at least 2, if not 3 games. You know, we saw Porter Moser save his rear end at Oklahoma, so now we get to find out about Rodney Terry at Texas. But I'm personally not optimistic that he gets retained.
Mm-hmm. Oh. So any final thoughts on this edition of March Madness, gentlemen?
Well, let's go to the Final Four. So, if it's all number 1 seeds, of course, yeah. If it's all, well, we went through each of the regions. Yeah. If it is all number 1 seeds, Auburn has been the best team for most of the season. But the best team right now is Florida. And when you add the Cooper Flagg injury and the Malik Brown injury into the mix for Duke, I just think Florida has the highest ceiling of any team. And I mentioned, Auburn can win fast or slow. Auburn can win pretty or in the mud. Well, Florida can do that too. And Florida, showed at the SEC tournament that not only can it win regardless of style, but it can win pretty handily. Like Florida is the team that's really in a groove. It's exquisite bad luck for St. John's to be in Florida's region. Now, I think St. John's has a good path to the Elite Eight, but running into Florida in the Elite Eight could be a bad break. Like if it was St. John's and Auburn in the same region, I would take the Johnnies. But they're not with Auburn; they're with Florida. So I think Florida has the highest ceiling and is playing the best basketball right now. And on the other half of the bracket, if it's a Houston-Duke national semifinal, who eliminated Houston last year? That would be Duke. Mm-hmm. And that was the game in which Jamal Shead got injured. Houston figured to win that game. Jamal Shead goes down. So if it is Houston versus Duke, oh man, everyone in that Houston locker room is just going to be, just foaming at the mouth. Let's take down these Blue Devils. So Florida versus Houston on Monday night, April 7th, and I have the Florida Gators cutting down the Nets as the national champion.
That'll be a great championship game.
Oh, man. That's going to be huge seeing what happens with this year's edition of March Madness.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, what do you think? Well, who are your Final Fours?
I was thinking Michigan State, Florida, Houston, and probably Duke. So yeah, I'll probably just have Michigan State over Auburn.
Well, I got Michigan.
I don't know who I would have winning over Florida and Houston though. That's tough.
Well, let's see. Michigan State is from the South for me. Going to take Florida from the West. It's going to be a dogfight between Florida and St. John's, but Florida gets the last laugh. I'm sorry to say this, Crimson Tide, but hope this motivates you, but Duke wins the East region.
Reverse jinx, baby.
And I feel like there's going to be some upsets all over the place in the choke region, a.k.a. the Midwest region. I think Gonzaga is going to pull off some magic. But Duke is going to beat Gonzaga. Then we're going to see Michigan State go up against Florida. Florida's going to win. Then we're going to see Duke, Florida. And it's going to be Duke winning it all.
Heavyweight matchups.
Mm-hmm. I'll pick Houston. To be different, I'll pick Houston over Florida. I'll be different.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
It's going to be fun. Like I think this is a pretty balanced bracket. Like I don't see any region where the number one seed has a cakewalk. You know, there have been brackets like that in the past. I don't think any number one seed has a cakewalk. I will say like the number one seeds probably have good paths to the Elite Eight, but not to the Final Four because there's a really good 2 or 3 seed waiting in the Elite Eight for each of these number one seeds.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, Matt, do you want to talk about College Wire, Trojans Wire, everything that's going on with you?
Well, so I'm the editor at Trojans Wire, and we are hopping mad. And Will, I'm sure you're hopping mad too. USC and Notre Dame women's basketball both got treated like dirt on Selection Sunday. Notre Dame bumped down to a 3 seed. What the heck was that? USC has to go through UConn in the Elite Eight for the second straight year. Why? Forget about having a rematch of the regular season. Like you should not be having regular season rematches in the Elite Eight if you can avoid them. But here's the bigger thing. Caitlin Clark has elevated the visibility of women's basketball in general. Like we're supposed to be making good business decisions, right? Decisions that improve the visibility of the game, that create the biggest rivalries on the biggest stage. So what do we have with this USC and UConn thing, being forced to play in the Elite Eight? It means that either Paige Beckers or Juju Watkins will not be in the Final Four. Like the selections committee guaranteed with this bracket that one of the 2 big super duper stars in women's basketball will not be playing in the Final Four. So it's unfair to USC, but beyond that, it's just a dumb business decision. Like ESPN is going to get lower ratings for the Final Four because you're guaranteed to not have either Paige or Juju there. And they did it for 2 years in a row. Like how dumb is that? You're just committing suicide financially, in terms of TV ratings, eyeballs, everything. Last year at least you had Caitlin Clark, but this year you don't. So you need Juju and Paige both in the Final Four, and yet you're putting them together in the Elite Eight. So that's just crazy. And then, Notre Dame was exceptionally good this season with Olivia Miles, Hannah Hidalgo. I mean, Notre Dame beat UConn. Notre Dame beat USC on the road. That's not a 3 seed. I'm sorry. Duke is not a higher seed than Notre Dame. Duke was a 2 seed. Notre Dame a 3. BS. Like that's not even close. Like this is like North Carolina versus West Virginia getting into the men's tournament. Notre Dame clearly was a better team with a better resume than Duke over the course of the season. You can't. Duke does not have the same high-end wins that Notre Dame had. So, Will, you and I, like, we're both spitting mad in reaction to the women's bracket, but that's what we're covering at Trojans Wire, since, you know, football is in purgatory. You know, great 2026 recruiting class at USC, but that doesn't help us for 2025. That doesn't mean anything for 2025. And then so women's, we're a women's basketball website right now at Trojans Wire.
There we go. So check out Matt Zemek and the magic that he's creating at College Sports Wire and Trojans Wire. I mean, I can tell you right now, this guy's a magician, not only in sports, but in everything as a whole. I mean, he's our go-to, and he should be your go-to as well, everyone.
Thank you, Jackson.
Oh, you're welcome.
And thank you, Will, for having me.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Sorry you just came in, Todd. I appreciate you hopping in, but we're gonna end our show and go fill out your practice, everyone, and go. Can't wait for these games to start.
There we go. It's gonna be a wild ride.